Quote love, unquote. Chapter 18. So we're almost at the end of the set, and Kaminari's in the middle of this epic drum solo. When he goes all out like that, it takes him a minute to recover, you know? Like, he'll look a little blank, and he'll make this weh noise, like he's put everything he's got into his music. Kaminari is rambling, but he's so enthusiastic about it, Bakugou can't bring himself to cut in. Instead, he lies across his bed, phone pressed between his ear and the pillow. Then Jiro walks over and sort of nudges him up, and he goes off towards the edge of the stage, holding his drumsticks over his head. The audience is totally into it, like waving along with him, yelling his name. Bakugou shuts his eyes, imagining it. Kaminari's an idiot, but he's also an electrifying presence. It makes sense that a crowd would respond to him. And then Jiro pushes him straight into the crowd. I knew I liked her. Kirishima laughs, loud and full. She's laughing the whole time, and Kaminari barely has the time to look mad at her, because the crowd caught him. And then he's crowd surfing, like actually crowd surfing. And Jiro's laughing her head off, and Ashido and I are trying to keep singing, but we're laughing too. He says it so casually now, like he thinks nothing of the fact that he'd been singing at the concert only a few hours before. Bakugou grins to himself, smug. He's always known that Kirishima would be a natural on stage, if he would just stop thinking so damn much about it. It was really fun, Kirishima finishes, laughing like he's still caught in that moment. I'm almost sad the tour's over. Oh yeah? Bakugou huffs. Kirishima scoffs over the phone. Don't give me that. I said almost. Then you're stupid, Bakugou informs him stiffly. Aren't you living your dream, or whatever? Or whatever, Kirishima says, and Bakugou can imagine him rolling his eyes, grinning so that one sharp tooth pokes out between his lips. I can't believe you're going to make me say this again. All of this would be perfect if you were here too. Over the past few weeks, Kirishima has said any number of equally sentimental things. He tells Bakugou he looks cute when they video chat. He sends him texts full of heart emojis and flexing muscles and thumbs up. There seems to be no limit to Kirishima Eijirou's affections. And yet, every time Bakugou comes face to face with them, those feelings are overpowering, unbelievable. Why should something so bright and warm be directed at him, while asking for nothing in return? Kirishima mimics clearing his throat. This is where you say, babe, I miss you so much too. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Well, asking almost nothing in return. I'm not gonna fucking say that, Bakugou growls. How about just, I miss you? Bakugou rolls over onto his stomach, clutching his cell phone against his ear. You already know I do, he says accusingly. I can guess, Kirishima says, voice rich and happy. He yawns. Maybe I should let you go. You've got a big day tomorrow, right? Not really, Bakugou says. And Kirishima laughs again. Okay then, I'll stay on the line as long as you want. Sero finds him asleep on top of his covers the next morning, phone still pressed against his face. You were both snoring, Sero tells him in a sing-song voice, once Bakugou has showered and eaten and doesn't quite want to strangle him anymore. Fuck off, Bakugou says, snatching back his cell phone. Sero says, sipping his latte. Please, remember to smile today, alright? Bakugou's face fills the screen, tear tracks cutting two parallel lines down his cheeks. He looks up into the camera and glares, his eyeliner miraculously untouched, despite the falling rain and wetness on his face. Hey! He yells out, and the camera pans out, showing him in profile. He raises a fist as though to strike. Just who the hell gave you permission to break my heart? Shindo is racing toward him, grabbing his outstretched hands by the wrist and pulling Bakugou in close. Bakugou takes in a shocked breath, looks as though he's about to start yelling again. But then Shindo leans closer and covers Bakugou's mouth with his own. Bakugou rips his arm free of Shindo's grasp, but instead of pulling away, he fists his fingers into Shindo's dark hair, pulling him closer. Rain falls around them, but they're both oblivious. The music beats out a rhythm that may as well be their heartbeats, a fierce pounding that drowns out everything else. But then, with excruciating slowness, Bakugou pulls himself away. "No," he says, forcing the words out. "It's not enough anymore." Inside the studio, the lights go back on as the screen fades to black, and the audience bursts into furious applause and cheering. On stage, Utsushimi gets up from her plush armchair to clap along with everyone else. "Wow, that really was something. Thanks again to Hero Films and Eraserhead Studios for providing us with that exclusive clip. Like, what do we think, everyone?" She throws out her hands and the audience continues to shriek, pounding their feet against the floor and standing up out of their seats. Utsushimi turns to where Bakugou and Shindo are sitting on the love seat beside her, offering them a conspiratorial wink. I think they liked it. Maybe. Shindo is beaming out at the crowd, but beside him, Bakugou merely lifts his chin into the air. Of course, he's glad the movie's been well received so far, but he doesn't have to let anyone else know it. After the applause dies down, Utsushimi retakes her seat, crossing one leg over the other and leaning forward so that it appears she's talking only to Shindo and Bakugou, and not to a packed studio audience. "So, Shindo-kun," she starts out, flipping her pale hair back over one shoulder. "You've been climbing up the ranks with independent film and supporting roles for a while now, but this is the first time we've really seen you take center stage. How does it feel?" Shindo shrugs bashfully, and the crowd goes wild for it. Bakugou barely has to resist the urge to roll his eyes, though he snaps his jaw shut with an audible click. "It's an honor, really," Shindo is saying, still sporting that 100-watt grin. "I mean, we can't all be Bakugou Katsuki, but I'm certainly trying to get on his level." Utsushimi and the audience laugh, as Shindo playfully elbows Bakugou in the side. It would be so easy, and so satisfying, to push him off the couch and onto the floor. No, Utsushimi laughs. "You're great. Don't we all think he's great?" The crowd evidently agrees, but that just might be due to Utsushimi's uncanny gift to spin a story and have everyone around her buying into it immediately. "And speaking of you two," Utsushimi continues, "what was going on set? There were all sorts of rumors flying. I'm dying to know the real story." At this, Bakugou turns and gapes at her. Not even a month ago, she'd hosted and then aired that interview with him in Kirishima. Where does she get off bringing up rumors now? Still, he knows how to play this. Before Shindo can answer, Bakugou jerks a thumb at him and huffs dramatically. "This guy's still alive, isn't he? So it went better than I expected." The audience bursts into laughter and applause at that. A good portion of them are probably here as his fans, so they'd be used to his mannerisms from all the interviews he's done with Todoroki and Uraraka and fucking Deku back in the day. It had been a running joke then, that Deku survived the experience. Utsushimi had been part of that world too, at least peripherally. She and Bakugou had modelled for a teen fashion line together, and then she'd played Minori, a recurring guest star in UA, and rival to Uraraka's character. Bakugou had loved shooting episodes with Minori in them. Utsushimi was hilarious, even when she'd been hyping up Todoroki's princely, and non-existent if you ask Bakugou, charms. Hey, Shindo cuts in, giving Bakugou a sideways smile. "It wasn't that bad, was it?" Instead of looking at Utsushimi or back at Shindo, keeping up the farce that is a conversation between them, Bakugou looks straight out at the audience when he says, "Worse." Bakugou glances to the side of the stage, where members of the crew are working, out of the sight of the audience. He makes the mistake of catching Sero's eye, and Sero takes the opportunity to smack an exasperated hand against his forehead. Bakugou's about to mouth something uncomplimentary at Sero, when Shindo leans in close and drapes an arm across his shoulders. "Such a teaser, this one," he says, clicking his tongue against the back of his teeth. Bakugou barely manages to restrain his flinch, but he doesn't even try to stop himself from slapping Shindo's hand away. He'd already had to film makeouts with this guy over the course of several weeks. He doesn't get to keep touching him. Tsushimi's still laughing, rubbing at the corners of her eyes. Okay. Settle down, boys. Let's get personal here for a moment. How's the boyfriend, Bakugou? Sometimes Bakugou forgets that the entire world knows. The moments he has with Kirishima seem to belong to another place and time. Something quiet and private and protected. Like last night, when he'd fallen asleep listening to the rich tenor of Kirishima's laugh. That belongs to him alone, and not to the saccharine world of daytime talk shows. He scoffs. Wouldn't you know better than me? What, because I got to interview him on the road? Tsushimi grins, smug. You all caught that, right? When we caught up with Riot between the shows? The crowd roars its assent, and Bakugou doesn't doubt that many of them watch every single episode of Glamour. Tsushimi moves on to Shindo after that, asking him about another actress named Nakagame. Bakugou tunes out most of their conversation. He doesn't really care what Shindo does with his time, or who he does it with. Anyway, Tsushimi says after a few minutes, back to the point at hand. Make My Story is hitting theaters soon, and that clip you shared with us reminded me of something. He can't explain why, but Bakugou's heart drops as Tsushimi speaks. He tenses up, hands curling into fists where they rest against his thighs. The studio goes dark again, the screen's lighting up with another clip. But this isn't a snippet of Shindo and Bakugou's new movie. Instead, it's an old episode of a show Bakugou finds all too familiar. His vision goes green as Deku's face appears on screen. He's years younger, dressed in UA's school uniform. Beside him, Todoroki grips Deku's wrist, keeping him close even as Deku's face wars with emotion. I do love you, Yuki-kun. Deku, or rather Daiki, is saying. I want that to be all that matters, but... But what? Yuki asks. Daiki pulls himself out of Yuki's grip. It's not enough anymore. The scene fades out again, the audience waiting with bated breath. We're all familiar with UA, aren't we? Probably the most popular teen drama ever, right, Bakugou? Tsushimi smiles widely at him. Bakugou sits stiff as a board, hands clenched so tight he can feel his nails digging into his palms. Backstage, Sero is gesturing widely at him, trying to get him to smile. Sure, Bakugou grits out. The scenes are pretty similar there, aren't they? Tsushimi asks. Were you making a homage to your old co-star? Bakugou can almost hear Sero's voice in his ear, chanting, don't freak out, don't freak out. But every time he thinks about Deku and UA, he wants to punch his fist through a wall. Deku's never managed to get anywhere on his own. He's always had to leech off Bakugou's success and talent and his very emotions, and now Bakugou's the one being called a copycat? It's fucking unreal. Bakugou leans back into the two-plush couch, crossing his arms over his chest. Maybe he was making a homage to me, you ever think of that? Tsushimi grins at him. Midoriya-kun made a homage to a movie you wouldn't make for another 3 years? Both she and Shindo laugh at the notion, likely writing Bakugou's words off as another one of his instinctively contrary retorts. Bakugou gnaws on the inside of his cheek to keep himself from correcting them. They don't make much more of it, and the more Bakugou thinks of it, the more he realizes that this was the studio's doing. They want to draw a line of continuity between what UA did and what Make My Story is trying to do. To comfort audiences with the idea that gay romances aren't new or actually controversial. Look, they seem to be saying, you enjoyed it last time 2 boys loved each other on screen. Come see our new movie and enjoy it again. It's a good way of defanging this most fraught part of the marketing. Attract the audience that's already there. Appease those who'd otherwise be up in arms. It's smart. It's logical. But Bakugou still spends the rest of the interview with his teeth gritted, as though keeping a lock on everything else he wants to say. By the time the car pulls up at the airport, he's a good 15 minutes late. Bakugou hasn't changed since the interview. He's wearing dark jeans cropped at the ankles, tan loafers, and a burnt orange coat thrown over his black button-down. But he barely feels the cold as he slams the car door shut and rushes into the terminal. His hair's a mess, and the makeup he's been caked in for the cameras is smudged. On any other day, he'd worry about the press seeing him like this. On any other day, he'd think about the consequences. But not today. He's been antsy for hours, and Sero's still at his elbow yammering out assurances. "Chill, Blasty," he says, as they head for arrivals. "Don't call me that," Bakugou snaps, still moving, barely sparing Sero a glance. "But Kirishima does," Sero says slyly. Bakugou growls. "Letting you and Pikachu exchange numbers was the worst fucking decision I've ever made." "Oh, for sure," Sero laughs. Before Bakugou can retort, or better yet, punch Sero in the stomach, he stops short. A stream of people are coming out of the arrival gate, pulling along suitcases and talking on cell phones. Bakugou waits as the crowd thins from a stream to a slow ebb. Now, only a few people are coming through at a time. The first one he recognizes is Kaminari, who looks cheerful enough, despite the bags under his eyes. He's got a leather jacket draped over his shoulders, his arms bare underneath it. He spots Bakugou and smirks, but doesn't say anything else. Then comes Jiro, heavy headphones around her neck, and a guitar case at her back. She's walking along like a zombie, and only stops when she bumps straight into Kaminari's back. She lingers there, half asleep as she leans against him. Bakugou is tapping his foot impatiently by the time Ashido appears. She looks the peppiest of the band members so far, skipping along and calling out that she wants to stop on the way home for cheesecakes from Pablo's. He doesn't care about any of them, at least not right now. Eyes fixed on that gate, Bakugou stares until he sees a familiar head of bright red hair. Then, he's moving before he can even think about it. How does Kirishima always manage to get him to do that? How does he affect Bakugou so thoroughly that all rational thought just deserts him? Kirishima has his earbuds in, but as soon as he spots Bakugou, he yanks them out, and his entire expression shifts. His face blooms like a rose, opening up and taking on shades of relief, joy, and excitement. Bakugou's running, and Kirishima meets him halfway. He catches Bakugou around the waist, lifts him up and spins him around and around, and Bakugou doesn't even care. He's laughing, clutching onto Kirishima's shoulders and feeling too much to remember to be angry. "Holy shit," he says, still laughing. "I've missed you." All of the texting, the phone calls, the video chats, none of it was enough. None of it compares to having Kirishima in front of him, his grip firm on Bakugou's hips, his laughter echoing through Bakugou's chest. Fuck, how has he lived without this? He buries his face into Kirishima's hair before he can say something else that's too honest. But Kirishima shifts them around so that he can pull Bakugou back towards him and kiss him square on the mouth. And shit, Bakugou may keep calling Kirishima an idiot, but right now he's the smartest person on earth. Because there's nothing Bakugou would rather be doing right now. Nothing else that matters, except the feel of Kirishima's lips, the pressure of his tongue. When his head stops spinning, Bakugou punches at Kirishima's shoulder. "Let me down, asshole." Kirishima smiles sideways at him. "But you like this." Bakugou snarls. "People are looking." "You like it?" Kirishima spins him around again, and Bakugou digs his fingers into Kirishima's shoulders in an attempt to keep his balance. He doesn't know what to say to that, so instead he shifts his hands to the back of Kirishima's neck and kisses him again. He bites down on Kirishima's lower lip, and Kirishima makes a low, needy sound that Bakugou wants to hear again, and again, and again. "You know we have an audience, right?" Kirishima says breathlessly, pulling away. Bakugou scoffs at him. Isn't that what he just said 5 seconds ago? And what does it matter anyway? He always has an audience. There's no getting away from that. He lifts one hand away from Kirishima's neck, pulling his arm behind him to flip off whoever might be watching. He kisses his boyfriend again, and again, and again. So, Jiro says, plopping down onto the couch beside Ashido and reading over her shoulder. This is charming. Kirishima and Bakugou are sitting side by side on the other end of the couch, Kaminari on the floor with his back against Kirishima's legs. In response to their questioning expressions, Jiro grabs the phone out of Ashido's hands and passes it around. It's the homepage of a familiar tabloid, one that seems to be writing about Bakugou every other week. Months ago, they'd run one of those bullshit stories about whether he and Uraraka were dating. Today, Uraraka is nowhere to be seen. Instead, it's a full-length picture of Kirishima and Bakugou. Kirishima is holding Bakugou up. Bakugou is flipping off the people watching them make out, and consequently also the camera. And the bustling scene of the airport is frozen behind them. Kaminari snorts out a laugh. You guys just have to attract attention everywhere, don't you? Kirishima has the sense to look bashful, but Bakugou just scoffs and kicks Kaminari on the side. Yeah, so what? I'm fucking famous, and so are all of you. Deal with it. Jiro yawns, stretching her arms over her head. We've been dealing with it for months now. Right now, I just want to sleep. Oh, come on, Ashido whines. We just got back. We've got to catch up with everyone in town. Bakugou, how's Uraraka? What? How the hell should I know? He hasn't seen her since he's been back in town. She's probably busy filming the next season of Zero Gravity anyway. We should throw a party, Ashido continues, since everyone else invited us to the beach last time. So that'll be Uraraka and Yamamoto and Todoroki and Ida and Midoriya. She goes on, but Bakugou is no longer listening. Thinking of all of them, Uraraka and Todoroki, and Deku especially, reminds him of the next movie he's going to shoot. Of all the reasons he didn't want to in the first place. And that makes him fucking angry. He gets to his feet, yanking Kirishima up with him. I'm bored. We're gonna go make out in your bed. Dude, Kirishima says, half a reprimand. But he can't pretend he's not interested in the suggestion, or order, as it was. Too much info, Kaminari chirps. But Bakugou ignores him and pulls Kirishima down the hall to his bedroom. Once he's through the door, he pauses for a moment, taking several deep breaths. It isn't fair. He's not supposed to be angry right now. He's supposed to be happy that Kirishima is back. Hey, Kirishima says from behind him. What's up? Nothing, Bakugou grits out. And then reflexively, idiot. You're idiot, Kirishima says warmly, wrapping his arms around Bakugou from behind and pulling him back against his chest. It feels so good, warm and certain. Bakugou forgets to correct Kirishima about who he was actually calling an idiot. He turns in the space of Kirishima's arms, looks him straight in the eye before their lips meet again. Kissing on screen has always been a chore. With Uraraka it wasn't bad, just awkward. And with Shindo it had been something to be endured. With both of them, and all his other romantic co-stars, he'd been more focused on making the kiss look good than on the feeling itself. With Kirishima, everything is different. He loses himself in the sensations, barely notices when they end up on the bed, lying side by side. It's only when he opens his eyes once more that he notices what's just outside the window. You've got to be fucking kidding me, he snarls, pulling away from Kirishima's grabbing hands. What? Kirishima whines, following Bakugou's gaze. Oh. Make my story, the billboard reads in bold red print. The background is black, so that Shindo's dark hair fades into it, where his profile is depicted. In the foreground is Bakugou, staring straight out at the viewer. His expression is guarded, conflicted. His eyes are lined in red, his shirt a stark white against the dark billboard. He has one hand clutched into the fabric, right over his heart. "Shit," Kirishima says, sitting up in the bed. "You look really hot." He bites down on his lower lip, eyes fixed on the billboard. The rage burns through Bakugou, igniting as quickly as a match catching a flame. He growls, seizing Kirishima by the shoulders and pushing him back onto the bed. He climbs on top of him, pinning Kirishima down and blocking his view of the window. "You want to focus on that?" he demands, licking his lips and looking down at Kirishima with predatory intent. "Can I get distracted by a fucking picture when you've got the real thing in your bed?" Kirishima swallows, licks his lips. His red eyes are hazy as he looks up at Bakugou. "Only focus on me, you got that?" Bakugou says, leaning in close. Kirishima nods, laughter gurgling out of him. "Babe, I can't do anything else." Bakugou leans down to kiss him, sharp and biting. Kirishima runs his hands through Bakugou's hair, tugging at it and making Bakugou moan into his mouth. He can feel Kirishima everywhere, the hard press of his body, the pressure of his hands, the sharpness of his teeth. He wants to lose himself to this, to pay attention only to Kirishima, the way he wants Kirishima only to think of him. They kiss like that for long moments, Bakugou lying on top of Kirishima, their legs tangled together. But soon enough, Bakugou has to surface for air. And when he does, he finds Deku and Todoroki staring down at him. "Motherfucker!" he startles, pushing away from Kirishima and backing up to the edge of the bed. "What?" Kirishima looks around wildly for the source of Bakugou's distraction. "What is it?" Bakugou is glaring up at Kirishima's wall, where a full-size UA poster stares down at him. Todoroki has one arm around Deku, and Deku is leaning up to kiss Todoroki's cheek. In the opposite corner of the poster, Uraraka is laughing and hugging Bakugou around the waist, while he makes a pinched face and tries not to smile at her. "That!" Bakugou gestures at the poster, chest heaving with rage and breathlessness. "Take that shit down now!" Kirishima looks up at the poster, almost endearingly confused. "What, that? I've had it up for years. It's been there every time you've been here." He surely must have noticed it before, or maybe he'd been too distracted, thinking about how surreal it was to have ended up in Kirishima's bedroom. "And now you have me," Bakugou spits back at him. Kirishima blinks. "I mean, yeah, but what?" Bakugou demands. In the back of his mind, he knows he's being unreasonable. Kirishima doesn't know everything that's happened today, or everything that's happened in his life. He doesn't get why Bakugou can't stop fucking thinking about this. "It means a lot to me," Kirishima says, defiantly. He looks up at the poster, a half-smile tugging on his lips. "I get that you don't have the best memories of the show, but, dude, I still love it." It's not just the memories. Bakugou's not a fucking child, and he could get past the things that happened years and years ago. But every time he tries, they come back to haunt him. None of this shit will let him be. Will let him just have his happiness. "Fucking Deku," he sees, sneering up at the poster. "He couldn't act his way out of a goddamn paper bag. He just fucking copies me, and everyone thinks he's the genius. Give me a break." "He does?" Kirishima blinks. Fuck, he hadn't meant to say that. Bakugou breathes heavily, pressing his fists against his thighs and staring down at the floor. Fucking whatever. The mattress shifts as Kirishima sits beside Bakugou, draping one arm over his shoulders. I guess we could always just sleep over at your place, if the poster bothers you that much. They sit like that, in tense and then companionable silence, for long moments. Bakugou leans back against Kirishima, and feels the rage leaching out of him, unable to withstand Kirishima's comforting presence. He's half asleep when Kirishima gently nudges him. "Chihiro's making okonomiyaki," he says, with a toothy grin. "It's really good. You want some?" Bakugou looks up at him and inhales a sharp breath. How is he like this? Why isn't he demanding more explanations? Why doesn't he just walk out when Bakugou explodes on him? How can he be so accepting, so kind, so cool about it? "Fuck," Bakugou says, rubbing at his eyes with the heels of his hands. "I think I love you."